motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Ben Shalom, who promotes young Carolyn Dubois, says she wants Katie Taylor and Michaela Mayer fights. And I don't doubt that the young up-and-comer does, though I think she's going to come up short.
At this time, she has nothing to offer either of those two fighters.
Don't misunderstand me, because I have a very high opinion of Carolyn Dubois. Boxer CEO Ben Shalom, who promotes rising fighter Carolyn Dubois, says the 22-year-old is eager to face the best fighters in and around her weight class. Dubois will return on June 16th when she faces the WBC's number 2 ranked lightweight
Yanina del Carmen Lescano
at York Hall in London. Katie Taylor holds all the world titles at 135, while Chantel holds every major title at 140.
Seems that young Carolyn Dubois is going the WBC route in order to corner a fight with Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor, who may end up fighting either Amanda Serrano or Chantel Cameron for a second time.
I feel like this is Carolyn's only avenue of opportunity to perhaps get a fight with Katie Taylor sometime down the line, becoming one of her mandatory challengers by way of the WBC in this instance.
And even that's not a guarantee.
Carolyn Dubois would like to get former world champion Michaela Mayer ranked at number 1 by way of the WBC by the end of the year. That shows where she's going to be going, Shalom told Sky Sports. She's a phenomenon. For me, Carolyn Dubois is ready for Katie Taylor this year. She's ready to go. Lascano is a big fight for someone in their 7th pro fight. This is Carolyn wanting to make statements, and make statements early in her career as well. I think Chantel showed she, Katie Taylor, is more comfortable at lightweight. I do expect a rematch to happen at lightweight. It would be a great passing of the torch to possibly get Carolyn Dubois in the ring with Katie Taylor before she retires.
So before it becomes about Katie Taylor or Michaela Mayer, she's got to make it through Yanina Lascano, a rather statuesque Argentinian lightweight who's tough.
You look at the other fighters and what they've achieved in their 30s, but this is someone at 22 years old that's showing frightening potential. She wants to fight Michaela Mayer this year. She wants to fight Katie Taylor.
Ben isn't exaggerating when he talks about Carolyn Dubois' potential. She is that good, that powerful.
But before it becomes about either Katie or Michaela, she's got to make it through Yanina. And those Argentinian fighters, they're not always the most skilled, but physically, they're durable, they're tough and strong.
Yeah.
That's what Yanina Lascano is.
Yeah.
A very statuesque, rangy lightweight that's been around the block.
She can punch.
If Carolyn Dubois were to, hypothetically speaking, stop Yanina Lascano, that would indeed be a statement, as Yanina has never been stopped.
She's only 27 years old, so she's far from over the hill.
Yanina's not perfect, but she can push back. I mean, this is a step up for Carolyn Dubois from every girl she's fought so far, and that's basically saying that I'd pick Yanina to beat all the girls that Carolyn has beat thus far.
But beating Carolyn is quite a different assignment.
This brings her closer to a world title shot, a world title opportunity.
Former unified super featherweight champion Michaela Mayer is currently ranked at number 1, and that's basically saying that if Carolyn beats Yanina,
Carolyn and Michaela will be the number 1 and number 2 fighters ranked by way of the WBC. A fight between them would crown a mandatory challenger for Katie Taylor. Now, I don't think Michaela Mayer is keen on that Carolyn Dubois fight. I vaguely recall hearing Michaela say something like, Carolyn's too young, too green.
Excuses.
Fucking excuses, that's what they are in truth. Carolyn is a high-risk, low-reward. If she stays in character with Yanina,
If she beats her, she's gonna want Michaela Mayer next, and I'd sooner expect Michaela to go all the way up to junior middleweight and see about fighting Natasha Jonas before she'd share the ring with Carolyn, because for Michaela, there's nothing in it for her.
there's nothing in it. There's nothing to gain.
You say that going up to 154 pounds for Natasha is a pretty big jump from 135, but it's the same jump that Natasha made. It's the same jump that Terry Harper made after her.
Michaela Mayer has always had very generous physical dimensions for super featherweight, and even now at lightweight. She's a tall drink of boxing, and I think she could make the same jump they made if the opportunity presents itself and she has to choose between fighting Natasha and fighting Carolyn. I think she'd fight Natasha.
Why do you keep bringing up Natasha?
Because Natasha Jonas and Carolyn Dubois have the same promoter. They fight on the same platform.
Because Natasha still hasn't come around to the idea of running it back with Terry Harper for Undisputed at junior middle.
And because both Natasha and Michaela need a big fight, Michaela, who's promoted by Top Rank, who has a working relationship with Sky Sports.
It could happen.
I think it could happen, would happen, before a Carolyn Dubois fight. Michaela has nothing to gain from fighting Carolyn Dubois. In men's light heavyweight news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Bob Arum has said that he will not push to make Beterbiev-Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev due to the WBC's ban on Russian fighters, preventing Bivol from fighting for their belt. I 100% support Ukraine. I applaud Mauricio Suleiman for the position that he's taken per the 3 knockdown rule with Steve Kim and Mario Lopez. Now, I've often talked about this from the WBC perspective and how hypocritical it is of them.
Pointless.
You're saying you're not going to allow Russian fighters to fight for your belt on the premise that Russia invaded Ukraine. But how many countries has the United States invaded?
That didn't stop you from allowing American fighters to fight for your belt, so why are you taking this stance with the Russians?
Leave the pugilism to the pugilists and the politics to the politicians. There's no point in this. And I've often talked about that. But looking at this from the Top Rank angle, the Bob Arum angle, do I actually think it's political sentiments that motivate his aversion towards pursuing this fight?
No, I just think he's using that as an excuse not to make it. He's hiding behind this.
I haven't soon forgotten that for the longest time, Bob Arum was pouring cold water over this fight. Well before the conflict between Russia and Ukraine started, Bob wasn't interested in making this thing. I know that briefly, after Dimitri beat Canelo, it seemed like Bob was coming around to the idea of trying to make this fight happen. But now
he's gone back to singing the same old tune. He's not interested in making it. He's just using this as an excuse, the latest excuse not to do it. Before, it was that Beterbiev-Bivol is boring. Now, it's because of the WBC stance.
Does the WBC think we're all idiots? Do they expect us to look at Beterbiev-Bivol as being more Russian than Artur Beterbiev?
You think we're idiots?
You're trying to convince us that Artur Beterbiev isn't a Russian fighter because he has a Canadian citizenship? Beterbiev-Bivol's based out of California.
They said something about him being able to petition for a special permit that would allow him to compete as a non-Russian fighter. I don't even know if that is an avenue that Vadim Kornilov and Dmitry have explored yet, but if it's still there, then they should.
Though being honest, that sounds too much like denouncing the Russian government publicly and their political actions, which could come with dangerous implications for Beterbiev-Bivol and any family that he might have in the region, i.e., the WBC just need to leave the politics to the politicians. Stay out of this.
This ain't none of your business.
The latest crutch for Bob Arum to forego making this fight. If Artur Beterbiev beats Callum Smith,
he's got another mandatory challenger in the queue in Germany's own Michael Eifert. Michael Eifert, who was in action some time ago opposite the ring former champion Jean Pascal in Canada. And he beat Jean Pascal. He is now the IBF's mandatory challenger.
But that fight has even less buzz, even less razzmatazz and pizzazz than a Callum Smith fight, which is underway. Artur Beterbiev, not getting any younger, already close to 40. Doesn't it make sense to get him the best fight you can get him?
I've long maintained the position that Bob, for the most part, most of the time, he just doesn't see the value in 2 Russian fighters, 2 Russian nationals, duking it out.
Tack on whatever it is that Beterbiev-Bivol made in the Canelo-Alvarez fight and what his financial expectations may be for this one, an undisputed light heavyweight title fight. It may cost Bob Arum more than he's willing to shell out.
But what about Artur? Doesn't Artur want this thing?
I'll tell you something. I vaguely recall hearing Artur Beterbiev or someone in his team playing with the idea of moving up to cruiserweight.
The plan can't be for Artur to just sit there aging and taking on mandatory challengers that have no profile. Perhaps if he beats Callum Smith, maybe he leaves.
Yeah.
Maybe he vacates.
Now, Callum has a profile. Callum does, but Michael Eifert doesn't. And that's the next guy in the queue. So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We're going to have Artur sit here taking on mandatory challenges?
That's it. That's the master plan. Have this guy fight mandatories well into his 40s.
So maybe he moves up. I've heard it expressed that Artur Beterbiev may move up to cruiserweight at some point. It just so happens that the WBC cruiserweight champion is Badu Jack.
If Badu Jack can win a title at cruiserweight, perhaps Artur can as well. Badu Jack used to campaign at super middleweight, at light heavyweight, like Artur Beterbiev, but he's never been the puncher that Artur is.
So maybe Artur can go up there and win a title. The only caveat is, would Badu Jack be receptive to a fight with Artur Beterbiev? I mean, what's in it for him? Badu Jack seems to have his heart set on a Canelo Alvarez fight for obvious reasons.
There are 3 other champions up there at cruiserweight. Maybe Artur could see about fighting one of them. I just get the sense that
if they're not really going to go after a Bivol fight, then there's not much reason for Artur to stay there and keep making the light heavyweight limit.
Not if he ain't gonna pursue Bivol after Smith. Dimitri Bivol, who's supposed to still be in negotiations for a Canelo Alvarez rematch.
I thought Vadim Kornilov said there wasn't going to be a rematch.
Yeah.
According to Michael Benson, Canelo Alvarez versus Dimitri Bivol rematch negotiations remain ongoing. Eddie Hearn told me today, he said, it's not even a case of Bivol pricing himself out. He just feels that he has a certain value in that fight, and at the moment, we're not there.
It's almost like the boxing world is punishing Dimitri Bivol for having won that Canelo Alvarez fight.
It's almost like the WBC is trying to freeze him out of big fights, big negotiations. It's almost like
he's too good for his own good. I don't really want to see him fight Canelo Alvarez for a second time. I'd prefer that Canelo fight David Benavidez or Demetrius Andrade in September. And what I would prefer is Bivol versus Beterbiev.
It's not looking like Dimitri's going to be able to get out there this summer. That's the look of it.
That's because there's nobody else. There's nobody left. There's nobody left to fight. The only fight to make at light heavyweight is the Artur Beterbiev fight.
But if Bob's not going to pursue it, where does that leave Dimitri Bivol? If Bob's not going to pursue the Beterbiev versus Bivol fight, and Bivol's not seeing eye to eye with Team Canelo, then what happens? What happens to Dimitri Bivol?
Like I said, it's almost like they're chastising him for beating Canelo Alvarez. They don't want him mucking up any other situations, so they're freezing him out.
With Bob, he just doesn't see the value in 2 Russian nationals duking it out here in America or in Canada based on what it would cost to get both guys in the ring, more than he thinks the fight is worth.
He can say all that stuff about Mauricio and the WBC and the whole thing with Russia and Ukraine, but I feel like if Bob really wanted to make that fight, he could convince Mauricio to soften his stance.
And if the fight were a big money fight that would yield big sanctioning fees for the WBC, I don't think for a second they'd be taking a hardline stance like this.
If they figured that this is a fight that could do in excess of 1 million pay-per-view buys or anything like that, I don't think they'd be at all concerned with the politics.
So when you look at things through that filter, what you start to ask yourself is, what is this really about? And I think it's about freezing Dimitri Bivol out. Skilled fighter that he might be, they don't see the value in him, which is unfortunate, but that's what I think is going on. Finally, in men's lightweight and super lightweight news, Bob Arum has named 3 options he will offer Devin Haney for his next fight for now that he is a free agent per the 3 knockdown rule. Shakur Stevenson, Vasyl Lomachenko in a second fight, and Tosh Jaylor versus Teofimo Lopez winner. The fight's set to go down this weekend. I don't really think Devin and his father fancy a Stevenson fight for now.
No.
That fight is not as big now as it could be later, but it is a dangerous fight. A Vasyl Lomachenko rematch.
That's gonna have to be for more money if Devin even considers it. You would have to pay him more for the second fight, I think, than you did the first.
And the Taylor versus Lopez winner. I think the attractiveness of that fight to Devin, the attractiveness of that fight with that fighter depends on who that fighter is.
Yeah.
If that fighter is Teofimo Lopez, I think he might just take up Bob Arum on his offer. But if it's Josh Taylor,
Not as appealing, not as attractive, and not as marketable in the American market.
a lot of people feel like Josh Taylor is going to go in there and manhandle Teofimo Lopez. Let's say that he does. Let's say that he goes as far as stopping Teofimo. You're talking about a naturally bigger fighter with more power than Devin, more size than Devin.
Don't forget he's a southpaw.
We saw how Devin Haney looked opposite the ring, a more pint-sized southpaw. in Vasyl Lomachenko. Don't forget that this is a guy who used to campaign as low as featherweight and super featherweight. Obviously, Devin fought him at lightweight, and Devin had a height advantage over him, a size advantage.
He was the bigger guy.
I still feel like Vasyl Lomachenko won that fight, and he was robbed. I'm not going to apologize for that. What do you think would happen if Josh Taylor were in there with him? If Josh Taylor beats Teofimo Lopez, and if he stops him, what kind of chances do you give Devin against him?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The fight's this weekend. We'll get all the answers we need, though I maintain my original position that I feel like Devin would rather fight Teofimo than Josh.
These young American-born fighters, American-bred fighters, it's a more marketable fight in the American market than Haney versus Taylor, Haney versus Lopez.
Yes.
You can sell that, but you can't really trust Teofimo to get the job done. His head seems like a bag of cats these days. We'll just have to wait and see, and now we know that both Matchroom and Top Rank have that to which they can offer Devin Haney moving forward. But where is the PBC? Where is Gervonta Davis? Where's the offer from him? I know of no news report, no story out there right now of an offer going out to Devin Haney for a Gervonta Davis fight. We know Matchroom's got something,
Yeah.
and Top Rank's got something.
Yeah.
Didn't Gervonta Davis himself say that that's a fight that he would like to have, a fight that he would like to explore? There's nothing stopping his team from making Devin Haney an offer, even if Gervonta Davis is serving out the rest of his sentence.
What his manager is for. What about GTD Promotions, Gervonta Davis Promotions? Who's running the show over there? Where's Tom Brown? Where's Leonard Ellerby?
All these people you saw in the Ryan Garcia fight.
Where's Calvin Ford? He's been doing the rounds. He's had a lot to say the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, following that Ryan Garcia knockout win.
Where's Al Heyman with an offer? Where is Stefan Espinoza? Have any of these guys actually reached out to Devin and made a proposal? Because if they haven't, you can hardly blame Devin for the fight having not happened. If it doesn't happen later on this year, that's hardly Devin's fault. He's a free agent.
Davis is the cash clown's cash cow. Ashtray, ain't he supposed to be the biggest name, the biggest fish in this pond? What are his people waiting for?
Because they sure like to call him the face of boxing and the cash cow at these weights. They sure like to say that, but when it's time to put up or shut up...
Where's the offer?
Not saying that they will or won't make an offer so much as if they don't. If the only offers out there to Devin are offers from Top Rank and offers from Matchroom...
Then lay the blame for this where it belongs. Lay the blame at the feet of Gervonta Davis and his team.
It's very simple.